Hello and welcome to the third installment of our six-part Parent University series exploring restorative practices with Nathan Maynard. My name is Dr. Ben Lester, and I am the administrator on special assignment leading the Office of Student Services in school operations for the Cherokee County School District. This series is part of the district's Social and Emotional Learning Initiative, CCSD Cares, Cultivating Achievement, Resiliency, and the Empowerment of Students. And our vision is that all CCSD students will thrive today, tomorrow, and throughout life with a sense of purpose and self-worth. Our previous sessions focused on defining restorative practices and how they can be effective in building strong relationships at home through improving connections and increasing confidence. We are implementing some of these practices and strategies in our schools this school year and want to make sure that families have an opportunity to learn about them and make connections between home and school to best support the social, emotional wellness of all children. And tonight we will focus on creating a positive home environment that it connects everyone and builds strong relationships through family meetings. Thank you again for attending and welcome Mr. Nathan Maynard.
Thank you all for joining us this evening. Like Dr. Lester was saying, this evening we're going to be talking about family meetings and how we can incorporate that into our homes to really create a good sense of belonging for our kids and sort of create this atmosphere in the home that we're going to have really good communication and talk to one another and go through things together. So to go ahead and get started, let's start out with a censoring activity. This one is coined the weird lip trick. I'm not really sure the technical term for this one, but I like this one. It's called the weird lip trick. So if you're tuning in live, what I'd like you to do now is go ahead and close your eyes. And I want you to take your index finger and I want you to place it below your nose, but above your upper lip. And if you need some help, you can open up your eyes and sort of see where my finger is. But go ahead and place your index finger below your nose, but above your upper lip with your eyes closed. And I want you to firmly press there and just rub on that spot right there for about 30 seconds. All right, about 10 more seconds. All right, go ahead and keep your eyes closed and slowly remove your finger. I want you to think about that sensation. And when that sensation goes away, slowly open up your eyes. All right. So now that we are in the present moment and we did something to help center ourselves, let's go ahead and start in with our first sort of check-in to see how everyone's doing. This one's going to be focusing on our topic that we're going to be talking about today, and this is going to be about these family meetings. What I'd like us to do in the chat feature, I would like us to answer, how do you make your kids feel they belong when they are at your home? So whatever this may be, how do you make your kids feel they belong when they are at home? And Dr. Lester, while people are thinking about their responses, is there anything that you do to sort of welcome when your children come to your home?
Thank you, Nathan. Yeah, we love food in our house, and cooking together is actually something that we do in a very intentional way to make sure my daughter feels like she's a part of the family and belongs with what we're doing. So it's not just asking, what are you in the mood to eat or dinner tonight, but it's actually part of the making the food process, whether that's chopping or helping mix stuff together. But we found over the years it's fun, it's engaging, and everybody kind of feels a part of that process. So it's a fun experience. If families haven't done that, I would encourage you guys to do that with your kids too. It can be a lot of fun. It can be messy. Let me tell you that it can be messy, but it's also very fun.
That's great. And why those responses are still coming in there. One thing that I do with my son is I know that he really likes physical touch. So anytime that he comes to my house, the first thing I like to do is just give him a big hug every single time and say, I'm so happy to see you. And then from there, we do a lot of different sort of activities. Sometimes it's cooking, sometimes it's cleaning, sometimes it's stuff he doesn't want to do. But I always let him choose at least one thing we're going to do that evening together, just him and I. It can be the smallest thing. It can be something bigger. If we have the time to do it, we're going to try to do it. But I let him to have a little bit of choice every single evening. And that's something that I sort of help him with that sense of belonging. And Dr. Lester, is there any things coming through the chat of other people and what they do?
Yeah, similar comments there too about having that choice. Hugs, lots of affirmations, with their children. Playing games, outside games, but also taking time to turn off the technology and play a board game together and just kind of connect with each other. That's something we do in our family too. We play a game called Trio. It's kind of like a tic-tac-toe game, but it's these concentric circles. It's very fun. But playing board games, going outside again, playing, just involving the kids, someone has said, with the decision-making process. Something as simple as planning a family vacation or activities for the weekend, involving the children in those discussions.
That's excellent. And thank you for everyone that was participating, putting some of that stuff into the chat. If you haven't put yours in there, feel free to continue to put those in there so other people can read those. When we're thinking about these practices and these sessions, I'm going to be delivering some of the knowledge that I have as a practitioner for some of this, but I truly believe iron sharpens iron. So anytime that we're doing something that might be special to us, let's share it out in that chat so we can sort of collaborate together.
Nathan, I know you've said this, we've talked about it before. I got to shout this out. Someone mentioned also Lego building together.
Okay, yeah. My son loves Lego. So Dr. Lester knows that I've used that reference a lot for my son and some intentionality around that. So now what I'd like us to do is just a quick review over the last couple sessions, just, a little overview. So if you were a part of those last sessions, this is going to be review. If you haven't heard those last sessions, this may be something new, and you can tune in and sort of watch those other ones, you sort of at your convenience. So when we're thinking about restorative practices, this relationship-based approach and how we can do this with our kids and our families, we want to be thinking about, where are we spending our time? What the studies show for these restorative practices to be effective is we want to be more proactive than reactive. Proactive is keeping a good relationship with our family, letting them know that they're loved, they're cared about, we're feeding that relationship, and we're doing things to sort of fill their bucket up with this love, this care, this attention, these affirmations. The reactive situations are when something goes wrong. How do we respond to it? If my son gets in trouble at school and then I have to collaborate with him and talk about what we're going to do to sort of fix what took place, that's some of that reactive measures. The more that we can be proactive and really build up this good relationship, stress communication with our family, and really let our family know that this is where we center our stuff around, the less we will have to be reactive in our families. When we're thinking about that reactive side, we also want to be thinking about what is driving the behavior. What we talk about a lot is all behavior is a form of communication. So what is that behavior trying to tell us at this time? When we're starting to see something take place, we want to put our detective hat on and seek to understand what's driving that. If we have a situation that continues to happen over and over and we try to punish it to make it not continue to happen, there may be something causing that behavior, and we want to sort of fix that and address that with our family the way that is appropriate. When we address what's causing that behavior, we're really meeting the needs at that time and coming up with something where we're spending our time to be more effective, less compliance driven, and more as a team unit that we want to sort of collaborate around. Some of the strategies that we talked about on the 80% proactive side, the first one that I wanted to sort of highlight from some of the ones that we talked about is the 2x10 strategy. The 2x10 strategy is for 2 minutes for 10 days to give complete undivided attention to someone in our family that we think that may need some of this relationship built back up. These are conversations outside of just what took place at school, or if it's with a spouse or a partner, what took place with work. It's outside of those responsibilities. It's just something to get to know them on a different level. We already have sort of this established relationship because they're our family, but we have to continue to feed this relationship. We have to understand that sometimes things occur that may damage those relationships. So we want to have some proactive strategies to continue to build that back up. When we're having these strategies and we're working with our families to try to build this back up, we also want to make sure that we're keeping ourselves in check in situations. There's been plenty of times where my son, as a 6-year-old, has done something that has made me mad, has came across something, and I've had to address it. But if I go into that situation not regulated, I'm going to escalate that situation. Dr. Bruce Perry, who does a lot of trauma research, said a dysregulated adult can never regulate a dysregulated child. So what we talked about in our last session was meta moments and what those are. Meta moments are something that helps us prolong the space and the time between you feel triggered and when you respond to a situation. If my son says he's not going to eat something and I say, hey, you've got to eat this, this is, dinner tonight, and he throws his plate off the table, I'm going to have an immediate reaction inside. I'm going to be upset. I made dinner with him or I made it by myself and I'm going to feel upset in that situation, but I'm not going to immediately respond. I'm going to make sure I'm regulated and I come to this with a clear mind to address what took place. If I don't have a clear mind and I go into that situation, what ends up happening is I may escalate that situation to a level it doesn't need to be. It's okay to be upset. It's okay to be angry at something. But if we go into this unregulated, we may be showing our kids or our family that we're not trying to work through this. We're just showing you how we feel in this situation. We talked about the acronym of PLAN: pause, listen, act, and next. So if you're interested in those, you can watch that last session and sort of learn some of those tips through that. What we're going to be talking about this evening is going to be these family meetings. Family meetings are gatherings that we're going to bring our family together and just collaborate with each other. It could be something fun. It could be something where we're addressing a situation or a problem that may came across our family, but we're doing this as a team atmosphere. So this evening, we're going to be talking about a layout of doing these family meetings of something called a circle. But before we get into the circles, I want to first hear, what are your current family rituals? So this could be something that you typically do every evening. It could be something that you guys do, every once a week, once a month. But what are some of your current family rituals that you do? And Dr. Lester, I know that you said that your family does a lot of cooking, but what other family rituals? Is there anything else that you guys do as a family?
Whenever I get home from work, the first thing I do, one of our rituals is we greet each other with a positive statement. Glad to see you. It could be an embrace also, like you mentioned earlier, but one of our rituals, every time I get home, I try and make the point, you've referred to this in some other conversations, some other sessions. I don't try and pick out the shoes on the floor or the socks that are over here or the toys that are out, but I'm very intentional and conscious of making a positive interaction. Is that first interaction with my daughter and my wife when I get home? Every night before we go to bed, we, as a family, one of our rituals is kind of sharing with each other one thing that we're thankful for that day. And it could be something profound, or it could be something as small as, well, I'm just thankful that, one night my daughter told, I'm thankful that, mom and dad live with me. Right. I'm thankful that we have a bed, a roof over our head. So we make it a point as a family ritual each day to kind of reflect on the day, closing with something that we are appreciative of and grateful for. Nightly story time is what someone else has shared as well. They do a nightly story time in their home with their children.
And while some of those are coming in, one thing that I do with my son is, every evening when we're eating dinner, before we eat, one of the things that we do is talk about one good thing that's happened to you today, and is there anything you need help with? That's just the two questions we ask every single time. I started out and I was asking a positive question and, what's something you wish you could change? But I started realizing with my son being 6 years old, that was more of a deficit mindset. So then I changed it up to, is there anything you need help with? And that could be from anything at all. And those are the two questions we ask every dinner. Are there any other ones coming through the chat?
Someone wrote, they make sure they have dinner together every night and actually sit down at a proper, dinner to share that meal together. And we all know how busy and crazy our lives are, but this person said they make it a point to make sure that they have dinner together.
That's great. Thank you guys for participating in that. When we're thinking about family rituals, it doesn't matter how big of the ritual it is or how small of the ritual it is, something that we consistently do. The biggest thing is it's something that we make sure that we have consistency around. When we start to build something up as a ritual, something that we continue to use, if we aren't consistent with it, what that does is that creates not stability in that situation and in that interaction. So then next time we have something that might be a really big ritual, something, that we're doing that we think is going to really build a relationship, really make a bond, but then we don't stay consistent with that either. We end up setting sort of these guidelines and these structures of what is going to be consistent, what is not going to be consistent. And we don't want our children to be thinking about that. We want them just to be focusing on this, continuing to feed this sense of belonging with their families and continue this on. So one of the biggest things with these rituals isn't how big it is or how small, it's how consistent it is. When we're thinking about these restorative practices and we're thinking about that 80% proactive, we're thinking about those first two components, which are the establishing and feeding of relationships. What we're going to be focusing on this evening is this feeding relationships with these family meetings, which we're going to be calling circles. The more that we continue to feed these relationships, the more that our kids and our family members will feel safe talking to us, safe coming to us when something big's taking place, something small is taking place, and we can be a true family unit and work through things together when we need to support each other. When we're thinking about circles and what a circle is, the shortest definition of a circle is it's a safe and supportive gatherings. This is where everyone's going to be in a circle. So there's no one that's higher up on the sort of the food chain or the power. We're all sort of equal, and everyone sort of has a voice to talk during this time. We want to really focus on meaningful dialogue and communication with these circles. We may be focusing on a big topic. Let's say that we need to move and we need to find a new house or a new place to live, or someone's, switching jobs or something's taking place. Those are times where we're going to bring our families together and be sort of reactive with these circles. The circles I'm going to be talking about this evening are the proactive ones. The ones where we're focusing on the feeding of those relationships and really creating a good sense of community where we can talk to one another. Some of these origins of these circles were derived from the indigenous communities throughout the world, where some of the North American indigenous populations, they would have a peace pipe. They would sit in a circle and in a community, and they would pass that peace pipe to the left. There's a lot of spirituality around this. And what they did was that's how they addressed sort of community situations, community problems that may arise, and they came together for everyone to be equal and everyone to be a part of it. When you have a household where you have the authoritative person or authoritarian person that's in charge, and everyone looks to that person for advice or that person for guidance or these situations, we don't create this sort of equal playing field, which we're trying to shoot for with these circles. Some of the uses of circles have started out in some of the places up here on the screen. They're using the justice systems for the juvenile justice as well as adult justice system, sort of a working group to sort of talk and collaborate with one another. They've been used in workplaces to communicate, social services, as well as schools. You utilize these a lot. With Cherokee School Corporation, that's something that some of you may hear from some of your students, from some of your kids, that they may be using some of these circles in the classroom to build up this sense of community, sense of belonging into that classroom atmosphere. Before we get into the circle, we have to make sure that we're going into the circle with a good state of mind. One thing that we've done during the last couple sessions, as well as the session this evening, was a centering activity. We talked a little bit about in the first session, the amygdala, which is that fight, flight, or freeze response to the brain. When that fight, flight, or freeze response to the brain is triggered in a situation, that's all we're going to be sort of dealing with in that time. That's sort of the picture over there on the left. The waves are rocking, we're in our boat, we're going through those waves because something's going on in our brain. When we're going into the circle, when we're having a time where we're being intentional about communication, we want to first make sure we're all equal, we're all even, we're putting that amygdala sort of in check. The way that we put this amygdala in check is using some sort of mindfulness or some sort of coping skill just to bring awareness to the present moment so we can be participating in this circle or this family meeting holistically and being a part of this. Some of the different ways that we can sort of do this are some of the same ones that we do for these meta moments. What we did this evening was the weird lip trick, the one where we place the index finger below the nose and above the upper lip. Pleasant imagery is having someone think about their happy place where they feel the most safe at, and putting some feelings around that and some of the different senses around this. What do you see around you? What do you hear? What do you smell with their eyes closed, and making that pleasant image? Deep breathing is being really intentional about your breath in and the pause, and your breath out and the pause. The more that we take these deep breathing, we're really focusing on not just the actual breath, but just those pauses. Counting backwards is just counting backwards from 10 to 1 in our head, doing this a couple different times, and then opening up our eyes and then being ready for this circle. All of these different ones, these examples, take about a minute or less. There's a lot of these that you can find on the internet. There's a lot of stuff sort of out there for these mindful minutes where we're just bringing awareness. But the goal of this is we want to make sure that amygdala is in check. We're going into this circle and ready to sort of collaborate and communicate with the rest of our family members. Some of the purposes of the circles are we want to feel the sense of connection. You know, we talked about this communication, and we really want to make sure that everyone can communicate and knows how to communicate when situations are good or we need to collaborate around something. But we mainly want to feel connected as a family unit. We want to make sure and honor everyone's perspectives and views. If you are the head of the household and you go into this circle and then everyone has their point and then you say something and what you say matters more to the rest of them, that's not really using the circle for the way it's designed. We want to make sure that everyone has an equal voice, everyone's perspectives are heard, and we're allowing each person to be heard. The more that we bring up sort of the sense of belonging into this home, the more that our families are going to feel safer coming to us whenever they need help and some of the support. When we're thinking about some of the expectations of holding these family meetings, we want to make sure that we have a couple different expectations laid out. This could be something sort of like, you know, let's be respectful to each other. One person talk at a time. Anything like this, we're just a little bit of guidance for our families so we understand these expectations. We want them to be clear, goal-focused, and respectful to everyone involved. Again, we're not pushing a expectation to meet this hierarchy of only the kids talk after the parents talk or anything like this. Again, it's an equal sort of playing field. One of the cool parts about this circle is something that was, again, derived from the indigenous population with this talking piece. Whoever has the talking piece is the only one that talks at that time. This talking piece in the home, you guys can come up with whatever this talking piece may be. It can be a pen, it can be a water bottle, it can be a certain pillow, it can be anything that you guys choose, but there's going to be a lot of power that lies in that talking piece. When you're pitching these expectations to your family to hold these family meetings, when you're talking about this talking piece, you let the family know that whoever has this is the one we're all listening to, we're giving complete attention to, and they're the ones that have the floor at this time. When they hand this off to the next person, whoever sort of wants that next may raise their hand, they hand it to that person. Then when they have the talking piece, they're the ones that get to talk. When we sort of mount this talking piece up to sort of this really powerful tool, it helps us all feel like this circle isn't just this list of rules on the wall or expectations over here. It's really just a powerful piece that we're going to talk to one another and all have a portion and a component that we can talk to if we would like to. When we're thinking about what we're going to be talking about in our family meetings or our circles, we have something called prompts. The prompts are what we're going to use to get our circles started, get our family meetings started. We can do these prompts as something sort of fun, some sort of open-ended question where everyone's able to sort of talk about, you know, what's your favorite superhero and why? We can talk about something more intense, you know, sort of like what I talked to my son about. What is something good that's happened to you, and is there anything that you need help with? We want to look at sort of these circles as not just focusing on the intense stuff or the stuff that may have more feelings involved, but just this sense of belonging with this circle. We don't want to be serious all the time. It's good to throw in fun things. But again, coming up with these prompts, we want to make sure that everyone's able to talk about this. We don't want to talk about something where only half of our family can give advice around. Let's say it's something about, tell me what happened in school today, and you have a couple, kids that may not be in school anymore. You want to do something that's going to make sure that everyone's involved and able to talk. The last component there up on the screen is you can co-construct these prompts with your family. One thing that I used to do for doing these circles in the classroom is I would have all of my students write down 3 different circle prompts that they would like to use and talk about in our circles. They would write down those circle prompts and then cut them out in small pieces of paper, and they would turn those into me. I would read 3 circle prompts from each person, make sure they're all appropriate, because you know how students get sometimes. Then after I'd get all the circle prompts, I'd put them into a jar, and then I would draw one out, and that's what we would talk about during that circle. You can do the same thing for your family. You can say, tonight, we're going to talk about doing this thing called circles. We're going to have something called a talking piece. Whoever has the talking piece is the one that's in charge at this time. They're the ones that are just talking. We're going to have a couple different expectations, so this is a safe environment to talk about. But to get our conversations going, we have to have something we want to talk about. So tonight, let's all come up with 3 to 5 different things that we'd like to talk about in a family meeting, just fun stuff. And then in those fun things, you can make a jar, have them all turn those in and sort of put those in the jar, and just each evening or whenever you're doing these circles, that's when you pull one of those out, and that's what you're going to talk about that evening. Some of the keys to success for these circles are making sure that we do have this talking piece. If we have someone where it's just whoever raises their hand, they're the next ones that talk, that's fine. But when we're coming up with some of the case studies that show this has been effective in the school systems and some of these other places that I was highlighting, it shows that these talking pieces have a lot of sort of grounds around this. So coming up with a fun talking piece is always a good start. Again, another key to success that we talked about is making sure we're all centered. We're in the present moment before we get into the circle. If I say, hey, let's have our family meeting or let's have our circle, and we go into it and I have a couple of my family members and they are dysregulated. Let's say they're getting texts from a boyfriend or girlfriend or something else is going on and they're really upset at this time. And then I bring them into the circle and I try to focus on, something, tell me about how you feel in weather terms or something sort of fun. I'm not going to get a good response out of them because they're not present in this time. So we want to make sure that we're trying to center each of us and making some really good intentionality around this is a safe place to talk as a family. This is how long this takes. Then after this, we're going to go out and do our rest of our routine or what we do for this evening. During that time, it's really good to have those clear expectations so everyone in the family understands what's taking place and what's going on. That's something we like to call as a preview for what's taking place. When we preview what those expectations are and saying, hey, we're going to be doing these family meetings. They're going to last 10 minutes or less. We're going to be talking about stuff as a family. We're going to have a talking piece, these expectations. Then afterwards, we can go out with the rest of our day. We're going to be doing that every single Friday, or we're going to be doing this every other day. Whatever we want to do, that's going to be a routine that we're going to be working up to and continuing to utilize. Like I was saying with those rituals, it's really important that we have consistency. So it's good to start small. You could start these family meetings and just do them once a week. See how they go, talk to your family and say, hey, I personally really enjoy this. Let's try to do this a couple times a week. What does everybody else think? And get everyone's sort of components and their voice involved and make a vote as a family. The more that you make changes and do some of these adaptations that we're talking about during these sessions as a with process, which means involving everyone involved, the more that it comes up, there's a lot more motivation to do these and participate in these. One of the last parts I have on this slide for the keys to success is optional participation. We do this in the classrooms and in education with doing these circles. In the family, we may have a lot more push for we want everyone to talk because I want to hear about everyone's day. A lot of the studies show these circles are powerful with optional participation because what that shows is it's a true safe place. If I go around a room and I have 10 people in there, and I say, I want everyone to tell me one thing that made them smile this week, everyone's got to participate. People are going to be thinking about what they're going to say and not about what other people are saying. We want these family circles to take place where people are participating in a safe fashion and they don't have to think about, oh, I don't want to talk about this or I don't want to be a part of this. We just want them to listen and collaborate around that way. So optional participation is really important to create this safe structure for these circles and family meetings. When you first get started, there may be only you talking and maybe one other person, depending on sort of your family size. You may be the only one talking. You talk about something and say, okay, well, anybody else would like to participate and say something? I would really love for you to. And then look around. If no one wants to, give them about 30 seconds. Say, okay, well, I appreciate you guys all sitting in the circle and doing this. We're going to try this again next Friday. And continuing to be consistent with it. The slower we are with it and the more intentional we are with it, we're going to get buy-in eventually from this. And if we don't, we're still creating a safe place in our household where we're showing that communication truly matters. This is a good pause opportunity before we go into some different types of circles you can utilize for your family. Does anyone have any questions so far before we get into the final Q&A? And Dr. Lester, if there's anything you would like me to highlight before I go into some different activities that families can utilize, that'd be great too.
No, I think you kind of went over it with the keys of success, because that was one of the questions. What happens when you do have a reluctant family member, right? How do you get that buy-in? And you discussed a couple of those things, but is there anything else you would like to say to that based on your experience when, like you said, when you do have maybe a reluctant family member?
Yeah, that's a great point. And when I see a reluctant person to participate in these circles or family meetings, I may talk to them outside of this family meeting, outside of the circle, and say, hey, I really appreciate you being a part of it, not being on your phone, not watching TV and just sitting there with us. But I'm just sort of curious, do you not feel comfortable talking tonight? Or is there anything going on that I could do differently? And just having a conversation with them to see if there's something that might be driving that behavior. Just like we talked about earlier, all behavior is a form of communication. If they say, nope, I just don't want to talk about it, say, I completely get that. Like we said in the beginning, it's optional if you're participating in this stuff. But again, I do appreciate you being a part of it. But I do want to ask you, is there anything we can talk about during our next family meeting that you might be able to lead for the rest of the family? Getting them involved with buying into the process by coming up with the next prompt or next sort of activity really helps establish some of this intrinsic motivation, because they're sort of helping build a component of it. And sometimes that does help.
Thank you.
Of course. All right. So that's the main parts of the circle, is those keys of success, doing some of these different prompts. Something else that we like to do with these circles outside of just these prompts are something called reflective circle activities. And this is something that we can do as a reflective family circle. This helps really make sure that we're paying attention to what other people are saying. This is a way that I sort of use this with my son who's 6, that I'm really trying to help him focus on being a good listener and listening to sort of what I'm saying and what other people are saying in his kindergarten class. So anytime we're doing something like a reflective listening, I want us to think about being a mirror. When we're being a mirror, we're listening to what the person says in front of us, but then we have the opportunity to talk after that. What that does is it shows the person that talked about the prompt first that they were heard and that we heard their why, about why they answered the way they did. It really helps, again, bring up this sense of community together, because it's not just 5 different people, 3 different people, whatever our family size is, answering a prompt. We're all sort of communicating together and doing this as sort of a reflective activity. And I'll show you how this is done. Let's say that the circle prompt that we have is, who is your favorite superhero and why would you want their abilities? The first person in the family, they may raise their hand. I hand them the talking piece of the pencil, and then they grab that and they say, I would choose Spider-Man. I'd want to be able to swing from buildings because I can move places quicker and would be able to stop crimes. Then let's say another person in my family, they raise their hand. Then person A hands them the talking piece. They grab the pencil and says, it sounds like you like Spider-Man because he can move quickly and you want to be able to help people. My favorite superhero is Flash. I would like to also move quickly, but it is so that I could visit anywhere in the world. Then the next person would say, it sounds like you want to be Flash because you like blank, blank, and blank. So the first part is you reflect back what you've heard in front of you. And then after that, what you do is you say and answer the prompt. It lets the person in front of you know that they're heard, and it works on our communication skills in these circles. And I found these very helpful. Another activity is called, or for this part here, this is if you want to try these. One thing that we like to do, that I've done in my home and that I've had other families do also, is what is one thing that happened today that made you smile? Just something that gets everyone going. The person that may lead this reflective circle might be the person that you choose and say, whoever's got the brightest color shirt on, they're the ones that are coming up with the prompt today. You look around the circle, you know, Ben's got the brightest color shirt on, he's wearing a yellow shirt, and say, okay, Ben, you're gonna be the leader today. Is that cool? He gives me a thumbs up. Ben, what's the prompt that you would like to do, or do you want to use something from the jar? Ben, draw something from the jar. The jar question is, what is one thing that happened today that made you smile? And then he goes over those expectations, and then the first person answers, they reflect back what they said, and then they answer. So again, you're a mirror, and then you answer that prompt, and that's sort of how you do that reflective family circle. The next one is the if you were me. So if you were me is sort of a fun spin on just being creative, interacting with each other, and just talking to one another in sort of this circle format. So the if you were me would be, what would you do if you were me? The first person presents a situation or a problem that they recently experienced, and then one family member at a time volunteers to answer how they would have handled it if they were you. Optional participation, just engaging our families at this time. We're not to sort of the reactive stuff, this is just that engagement. So the example for this one, and again, I've used my family's names up there. Asher's my son, I'm Nathan, Cole is my brother, and Laura is my sister-in-law, because it's just Asher and I that live together. So let's say Asher says, yesterday, I couldn't find any peanut butter for my PB&J sandwich. So then Nathan, me, Cole, my brother, Laura, my sister-in-law, we all answer if you were me, what we would have done. So I may go first, I get the talking piece. I say, I would have used banana slices and jelly instead. And then Cole may raise his hand, I hand the talking piece to Cole. Cole says, I would have ordered a pizza. And then Aunt Laura raises her hand, we hand it over to her. And she says, I would have went to the store, got peanut butter. I love me some PB&J. And that's all that circle is. Just each person presents a problem, and then we go around if you were me. The next person, then I talk about a situation that I dealt with, and then everyone can go around that wants to participate and just has a fun way of sort of engaging with me and coming up with what they would do if they were me and how to answer that. This is just another added way to get some of that engagement up. These are some of the proactive type components, that 80% proactive that we're trying to spend on. When situations do occur in our families and we want to be able to come together to get collaboration. Like I was mentioning earlier, let's say a move's taking place. That's a big deal for our family. Let's say someone's getting a new job or starting a new endeavor somewhere in some capacity. That's something we need to come together as a family. Let's say a divorce is happening and we want to collaborate together and sort of talk about this as a family, because that's a really tough topic. Let's sit down together in this circle, this family meeting, and let's talk about something together. What you're doing with these family meetings is you're setting up the structures and the support systems to be able to deal with some of these reactive situations, and you're strengthening communication at the same time. You want communication to be sort of the headstone for these circles and the real goal of these circles. The more that the family feels safe communicating with one another, the more they'll come to you when there's situations occurring and that we can talk together as sort of a team. So that brings us to the end of our family meeting session. So now I'm going to open it up for questions that may be coming up. So if you have any questions, feel free and put those into the chat. And Dr. Lester is going to be reading out those questions that may have come up about family meetings or one of our previous sessions.
Thank you, Nathan. As we get some participants getting their questions loaded here, I have one. Could you explain a little bit more? And on the surface, that may seem like a silly question, but I think it's one that requires a little bit of unpacking. And that's why a positive and safe home environment is so important to child development. Can you talk, we've talked about trauma-informed practices and that kind of thing in the school environment, but for me as an educator and also a parent, these family meetings and family circles really provide a safe space, and you've used that word several times tonight, in creating a positive home environment for the kids. Your research, your experience, why is that so important for child development?
Yeah, safe places are really important because when someone doesn't feel safe, that amygdala starts to fire in sort of the simplest of forms. That's that fight, flight, or freeze response. When we are trying to spend our energy and our effort to be safe, we can't really get to a different level of creating some of these cognitive type of processing and understanding really what's taking place, or listening to others, or collaborating with each other and really diving in deeper. So we spend all of our energy trying to be safe. Sometimes we may think of safety as, someone's rushing past our house and we need to jump in our house and lock the doors really quickly. And that's sort of that high level of safety. Safety is different for each and every one of us. It's hard to know what's safe for one person, what's not safe for another person, even if they're a family member, and not really understanding that. And so we're able to sort of talk to them and sort of feel this out with experiences, with communication, and know this. So creating a safe place creates this consistent structure in the home where our family members that may not feel safe outside, or may not feel safe even coming to us to talk to us, they now have a safe structure that they can lean on. A lot of times, the people that need the circles and the family times the most aren't going to participate, and that's completely fine. We're creating this structure so, again, they know that this exists. They know there's going to be consistency there, and if they want to talk at some point, they know they're going to be heard because they've seen other people be heard in those situations. The more that we create these safe structures, the more that they understand that when situations do occur, I can lean on that circle. I know how to communicate because I've seen other family members talk in this circle, and they're learning from those situations. In schools, we call this social emotional learning, and that's a big buzz in education. In families, we call this life skills. This is something that we want to learn for life skills. The safety structures that these family meetings come up with are teaching good life skills to our kids, to our other family members, and really creating this structure for good communication and learning what communication is all about. So then if those big safety issues do happen, where something does take place to our son or daughter or our spouse or partner, they feel safe coming to us. Sometimes we may think we're a safe person, but safety again is perceived. And maybe it might be one small way that we reacted to a situation that made our family member not feel safe to come to us again. So creating this structure is a good structure, not just for us specifically, but for that family unit.
Thank you, Nathan. One of the questions that's come in, you mentioned before in the other sessions about meta moments and just the importance of adults staying regulated and having a clear mind. You used the imagery of the calm waters, and you just spoke about the amygdala as well in the brain development. What are some suggestions or strategies you have seen, researched, or used as a parent that allows an adult and a parent in that moment of stress and heightened emotionality to remain regulated, or at least remove themselves to be in a regulated space?
Yeah, and that's huge. So one thing that I used to do before I got into education was I used to teach aggression replacement training for kids that were on probation. And it was a court order type program. So I didn't get a lot of this intrinsic motivation. They didn't really want to be there, but we had to sort of work through it. I had a juvenile group, and then I had the adult group, and sort of work through this. The biggest thing that I would talk about in these groups was it's really important to know your triggers, know what makes you mad, watch out for those. When you see one of your triggers taking place, you know, hey, I need to do something to get me regulated again as soon as that happened, before you start to even see your cues. It's also good to know your cues. What's going on in my body? What's going on internally, externally? Does my heart start racing? Do I get narrow vision? And understand those types of things. But the biggest component of these is understanding that I need one coping skill that I'm going to quickly turn to when I need it. If someone's if I'm driving down the road and someone cuts me off in traffic, I'm not going to be thinking about this guy named Nathan Maynard from Indianapolis, Indiana, doing this weird lip trick and getting in a wreck. I need something quick and active and ready to go. So that is my go-to sort of, coping skill. So coming up with a good coping skill that you're going to be able to use in any situation. Shutting your eyes and thinking about a pleasant imagery, that's not going to work. Counting backwards for 10 and shutting your eyes and doing this, putting your finger up here after your son just threw a spaghetti on the floor, that stuff's not going to work. That stuff is more in a calm situation, trying to center ourselves. So coming up with a coping skill that you can quickly turn to anytime a situation occurs is the most important part. These coping skills, though, they will not make you not mad anymore. So if you think a coping skill will de-escalate you, that is not the purpose of these coping skills. The purpose of the coping skill is to give you a moment to respond, or a moment to think about what you want to do before you respond. If you just quickly respond, you may respond the best way you could have. Or you may respond to a situation that you took a small situation and you just escalated it. So doing a coping skill consistently, having it in your back pocket that you can use in a calm situation, or you can use it when you're driving down the road and someone cuts you off in traffic, being consistent with it, and then understanding that was a moment before you respond, just to help get your mind in check to respond to that appropriately, is probably the key to that.
Thank you, Nathan. That helps a lot with thinking about, you make a great point. I put that in the Q&A chat about the coping skill isn't to, negate or replace the emotion you're feeling, but just give us that pause or that time to really understand we can respond and not just react.
Yep.
And we talked about that subtle difference in some of the previous sessions as well. One of the questions is coming in that has to do with, like, how long are these family circles or these family meetings typically?
So it depends on your family size. I like to keep these, with my son as a 2-person family unit, it's about 5 minutes or less. We just do something just between us. If you have a family of, let's say, 5 people in it, I would do about 2 minutes per person. I would do about 10 minutes. If you want to have longer family meetings where you start out and you do, a fun prompt, something about, tell me how you're feeling in weather terms, or in memes, some of those more fun ones. And then you have something serious, talk about one good thing that's happened to your day, one thing you need support around, or one thing you wish you could change. Those may take a little bit longer. The biggest thing is when you're coming up with your time frame for these family meetings is you want to be able to be consistent and be completely present during this time. If you say a family meeting is going to take 30 minutes, and then the first time you give it 30 minutes, the second time you give it 15 minutes, then you give it 10 minutes, then you sort of sit this one out because you have to go do some work emails and you let your partner carry on with the rest of the family meeting, you're not showing that this family meeting means anything, which means the rest of the family may take that same perspective. So the easiest answer is about 2 minutes per person. The longer answer is sort of just adjusting this to what you can stay consistent around.
Great, thank you. With your experience, what are some of the initial challenges or even setbacks that a family might face when implementing family meetings?
I think the biggest one is a lack of participation. And I think that's what gets a lot of people, should I continue to do this? Should I continue to sort of sacrifice my precious time and pushing this stuff forward? Or should I sort of move on and try something different? When we're thinking about everyone participating or good participation, again, we've got to look at the metrics of success. And the metrics of success of a good family meeting isn't 100% participation. It's that everyone was intentionally paying attention to one another and listening to one another and being present in the moment. If you only have 1 or 2 people that were listening and present and the rest of them were sort of talking or doing other things, that might be that circle wasn't effective. What can we do to sort of change up some of our expectations or our routines to be more effective with it? But I think the biggest thing we focus on is sort of the participation component. Other barriers that sometimes we see is people think of this, in the family meetings, people may think of this as, this is something I don't want to participate in. This is, immature, or this is for someone younger. Like, I don't want to do this stuff. I don't want to talk about my feelings. I don't want to talk about this stuff. I just want to go play video games or just be on my phone or be upstairs in my room by myself. When we're starting to hear those conversations or see some of those things taking place, that means that we need to be intentional about getting some motivation towards that family meeting. So what can we do as when we're first starting this family meeting up to have some enthusiasm around it, to say, hey, this is something that it's going to only take us about 10, 15 minutes. We're going to sit down here. We're just going to do this once a week. If you guys don't like this after doing 5 of these, we'll talk about maybe not doing them anymore. Something like that, where everyone knows, okay, so I have to do just 5 of these. And then after those 5, we can talk about if these are going well or not. And then you have 5 sessions to get some of that motivation bought into. You can say something where anything that you're trying to build up, that these matter, not just to me, but to the rest of the family too. Because if you have a family member that might have some conflict with you directly, again, you don't want to center this all about, hey, this is a mom thing or this is a dad thing. This is an us thing. So then it's easier for you to get some of that motivation for that family unit. But those are probably the 2 biggest barriers that I see families running into.
Well, thank you. I'm also hearing you say too that, especially in the beginning, it's just about getting engagement up, right? Getting engagement as a normalized thing with the restorative circles, and for the children in the home to feel safe and communicating. And it could be about a superhero. It could be about something silly, but the over time that engagement will lead to really more meaningful and deeper conversations as well. Is that what I'm hearing, Nathan, too?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
We've got one more question here, and then I'll close it out for us. But right here, we've got a question asking about, in your experience, Nathan, too, and families that you've seen use these restorative circles and our family meetings in these circle formats, how have you seen that change family dynamics and or seen individual students change when you were an educator in a school as well?
I think the biggest dynamics that I see changing is it goes from this structure of someone's in charge, that's who we look to, that's who, if a situation is occurring, I can sort of sit back and let this person make the decision, into we're all equal and we're on the sort of the same page. Having something with the circle layout as, everyone's equal doesn't just go towards this talking piece and these structures that are set up with how we do the routine of the circle, but really the way that we deal with situations. It's a true sort of everyone's voice is involved. It's not just we hear your voice and we're going to make our decisions. It's we're going to hear your voice and we're going to make short-term plans and long-term solutions together as a family unit. So even if you have a 6-year-old, so if my son's with my larger family unit and he says something, his voice matters as much as my voice as the father of this household, because we're all sort of equal. When we're saying something like this, we're empowering the circle, we're empowering the dynamics that come from the circle too. There's going to be decisions that the adults in the home may have to make those decisions. If we have to move, that's something where we may get the feedback for the rest of the family about, hey, we're looking at these 2 different places. We want to hear you guys' thoughts and feelings around these 2 different places and get this in there. But I want to let everyone know that the final decision will come to us or the person that needs to make that decision. What you're doing is you're using this circle as the vehicle to sort of have these discussions. Sometimes it's an equal, we all vote, we make this decision. Sometimes it's we just want to hear your feelings and your views, and we're going to talk about this together. But the circle is creating this dynamic of this vehicle for you to have those communications, those conversations. A lot of times we don't have that vehicle set up in our household or our families. So then when a situation does occur, it doesn't feel as natural. It feels like we're trying to pull something out and saying, hey, we need to have a family meeting right now, and bringing everyone to the living room and having them sit down and talk about it. When we do this, we're causing some reactions initially because they haven't done this before. We're causing some of these feelings that may not need to happen because we could have just had this vehicle set up already. So the main dynamics we're really trying to set up is a vehicle to deliver communication, get communication, and build up some of those life skills for our family members.
Excellent, Nathan. Thank you. This is the last question, and then I'll let you provide a closing comment before you hand it back to me. But, we've talked about this parent university is really connecting some of the things we're doing at school with our families. So what do family meetings look like in a school setting?
Yeah. So these family meetings in the school setting schools do these circles. They do these circles in the classroom. And that's something that, we're training, the school there, Cherokee School Corporation, trying to get people involved with these circles. So then students can talk to the teachers can talk to the students on an equal playing field and get sort of communication taking place. The family component of these meetings intertwine with school. What I see these coming into is when situations occur, good or bad, not just when something rough is taking place, but anything that's taking place, we want to look at each student having a team. That team there's components of that team at the school, there's components of that team at home, there may be external components too that are involved with the student, but each student has the team. So that is a time that we collaborate together. We highlight things that are good. If something that we need to talk about together, we can come together as sort of this family unit. But all together, what these family meetings do is it's giving us some of the structure to create a good team. And then on the school setting, they're creating this community in the classroom. But we also want to have these teams set up for each one of our students. Yeah. So thank you guys all for being a part of this session. I really enjoyed it. I hope you guys enjoyed this family time and some of the ways that you can use some of these circles for this family meeting. And thank you all. I'm going to hand it back over to Dr. Lester.
Thank you, Nathan. We appreciate your time and expertise in the area of restorative practices and social emotional learning this evening. We look forward to continuing the conversation during our next event on April 27th, again at 6 p.m., shifting from punishment to opportunity, and we will explore how to address behavior and begin the process of reflecting and repairing harm through restorative questions. Again, thank you for joining us this evening. Stay safe and be well.